There's a strange moment that happens to a lot of people, usually around the third or fourth time it occurs. You meet someone new. They're guarded, a little distant, hard to read. And instead of feeling cautious, you feel interested. Something in you leans in. Meanwhile, someone else comes along, warm, consistent, emotionally present, actually available. And somehow, that person barely registers. You describe them, if you're honest, as nice, which in the language most people use is not a compliment. This isn't bad luck. It isn't a broken picker, as the self-help books like to call it. It's a pattern with a mechanism behind it, and once you see the mechanism, you can't unsee it. So here's what we're actually asking today. Why does unavailability feel like chemistry and availability feel like boredom? Why do so many thoughtful, self-aware people who can spot a red flag in a job interview or a business deal from a mile away, walk straight past it in a relationship? This isn't really a dating question. It's a question about how the brain learns what love feels like. And it turns out the brain learned that lesson a long time before you ever went on a first date. To understand why, we need to look at 4 separate systems working together without your permission. Your nervous system's relationship to intensity, your brain's reward circuitry, the emotional blueprint you built in childhood, and the stories your culture has been telling you about what love is supposed to look like. None of these systems announce themselves. Nobody sits down before a first date and consciously decides, tonight I will be drawn to whoever seems the least emotionally available in the room. The decision, if you can call it that, happens far below conscious thought, in the same part of the brain that decides whether a rustle in the grass is a predator or just the wind. That's part of what makes this pattern so difficult to catch in the moment. It doesn't feel like a pattern. It feels like taste. It feels like simply knowing the instant you meet someone whether there's something there. And in a sense, there is something there. It's just not always what it appears to be. Let's start with the body, because the body usually knows before the mind does. In the late 1990s, psychologist Arthur Aaron ran an experiment that's become famous for the wrong reason. He had strangers cross a wobbly suspension bridge high above a canyon and then meet a person on the other side. Compared to people who met on a stable, low bridge, the ones on the shaky bridge rated the stranger as more attractive. Their hearts were pounding from fear. Their brains, however, didn't file that sensation under fear. They filed it under, this person makes me feel something. That's misattribution of arousal. The mind borrows the feeling of intensity and hands the credit to whoever's standing in front of it. The body doesn't come with labels attached to its signals. A racing pulse could mean danger, could mean excitement, could mean love. Your brain has to guess, and it usually guesses based on whatever story is closest at hand. Emotional unavailability creates the same shaky bridge on a much longer timeline. Will they text back? Do they actually like me? Was that a good sign or a bad one? Your nervous system stays activated for days. And because that activation feels like something, it gets mistaken for chemistry. Stable affection doesn't do this. When someone is reliably warm, your nervous system has nothing to solve. No puzzle, no spike. And a brain wired to associate intensity with love will read that calm as absence, rather than what it actually is, safety. Now layer onto this a second system, one that has nothing to do with romance at all, at least not originally. It's the same system that keeps people playing slot machines long after they've stopped winning. Psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered something in the 1950s that turned out to explain far more than he probably expected. He found that rewards delivered on a predictable schedule produce steady behavior, but rewards delivered unpredictably, sometimes yes, sometimes no, no clear pattern, produce behavior that's far harder to extinguish. This is called intermittent reinforcement, and it's the exact mechanism behind gambling addiction. The brain doesn't fall in love with the reward itself. It falls in love with the uncertainty of whether the reward is coming. An emotionally unavailable partner, whether they intend to or not, often delivers affection on precisely this kind of schedule. Warm one night, distant for 3 days, warm again, unreachable for a week, then suddenly attentive in a way that feels like everything you'd been hoping for. Each unpredictable return of warmth doesn't just feel good. It reactivates the entire waiting process, and dopamine, it turns out, is released more during the anticipation of a reward than during the reward itself. Which means the chasing itself, the checking your phone, the wondering, the small hope that today might be the day they show up fully, is doing something to your brain that a steady, reliable partner simply cannot replicate. Not because the steady partner is less loving, because predictability by its very nature doesn't create that same neurological hook. This is worth sitting with because it explains something people often feel ashamed of and rarely say out loud: the sense of missing the anxiety itself once a relationship becomes calm. That isn't a flaw in your character. It's a very literal chemical adjustment your brain has to make, the same kind former smokers or people leaving high-stress jobs often describe, a restlessness that isn't really about wanting the person back. It's about the brain wanting its old reward schedule back. Now for the part that goes further back than any relationship you've been in. Psychologist John Bowlby and later Mary Ainsworth, through her strange situation studies, showed that infants develop internal templates for what closeness feels like, based on how consistently a caregiver responded to their needs. Those templates don't stay in the nursery. They become the lens adults use to read every close relationship afterward: romantic partners, friends, even bosses. This is attachment theory, and it's one of the more well-replicated frameworks in relationship psychology, though it's worth saying clearly that it describes tendencies and probabilities, not fixed destinies. People do shift attachment patterns over time, especially through secure relationships or therapy. If a child grew up with a caregiver who is warm sometimes and withdrawn other times, present, then distracted, then present again, the child doesn't learn love is safe. They learn something closer to love is something I have to win. That template doesn't disappear at 18. It just changes costumes. Consider a composite example someone will call Maya, built from patterns that show up again and again in clinical literature and everyday life. Maya's mother loved her deeply and also disappeared into her own stress for days at a time, emotionally if not physically, distracted by work, by her own anxiety, by a marriage that wasn't going well. Maya learned, without ever consciously deciding to, that attention was not a given. It was something you earned through vigilance, through being good enough, quiet enough, easy enough, that your mother would surface and notice you again. Fast forward 20 years, and Maya finds herself, again and again, drawn to partners who are warm in bursts and then vanish into themselves. She isn't choosing badly on purpose. She's choosing familiarly. Her nervous system reads inconsistency not as a warning sign, but as the emotional temperature of home. And when a kind, consistent partner shows up instead, something in her genuinely doesn't know what to do with the quiet. She has described it in her own words as waiting for the other shoe to drop, and when it never does, some part of her gets restless rather than relieved. So, when an anxiously attached adult meets someone emotionally unavailable, it isn't a coincidence of timing. It's recognition. The unavailable partner is, without either person realizing it, speaking a dialect the nervous system already knows fluently. There's a related concept in psychology called the familiarity principle, and in relationships it operates almost like gravity. The brain doesn't rank experiences by whether they were good for us. It ranks them by whether they were predictable. A relationship that involves chasing, proving your worth, waiting for scraps of attention, that can be deeply painful and still feel like home because the emotional weather matches a pattern the brain has seen before. Consistency, by contrast, can feel foreign enough to seem suspicious. Some people describe a securely attached partner and, without irony, say it felt too easy, so I got bored. That sentence is worth sitting with for a second. Bored isn't really what's happening. What's happening is that the nervous system has no old wound to reenact, so it has nothing urgent to do. Psychoanalyst Ralph Klein described something he called repetition compulsion, the tendency to unconsciously recreate the emotional conditions of an old wound in the hope of finally resolving it. Not because we enjoy pain, but because some part of the mind believes that if we can just get a different ending this time, the original wound will finally close. This is why so many people find themselves, almost eerily, choosing partners who echo a parent's emotional unavailability, inconsistency, or criticism. Not the same person, but the same shape. The partner isn't really the target. They're a stand-in for an old, unfinished story. And this pattern doesn't only show up in romance. It shows up in friendships with people who only reach out when they need something, in work relationships with bosses who withhold approval just often enough to keep you working harder for it, in family dynamics that get quietly recreated with roommates or business partners decades later. Wherever there is a relationship, the same old blueprint tends to get pulled out and tested again. There's a fourth layer worth naming because it's easy to overlook: the stories our culture tells us about love itself. Consider how often a chase is framed as romantic. The love interest who has to work to win someone over. The brooding, hard-to-reach character who finally opens up, just for the protagonist, as if their walls existing specifically for that one person is the ultimate proof of love. These narratives are entertaining precisely because they mirror the intermittent reinforcement we already talked about, but they also quietly teach generations of viewers that difficulty is evidence of depth, and that someone's guardedness is a puzzle to be solved rather than simply a trait to be respected or not, depending on whether it changes. None of this means every unavailable person is secretly a rich, layered character waiting to be unlocked by the right person's patience. Sometimes emotional unavailability is simply someone's honest, current limitation, and no amount of chasing changes it, because a person can only meet you as fully as they're capable of meeting themselves. So what does this actually look like outside of theory? It looks like feeling most drawn to someone in the exact moments they pull away. It looks like interpreting inconsistency as mystery and consistency as lack of depth. It looks like replaying a single warm text message for days, turning it over as evidence, while barely registering weeks of someone else's steady, unremarkable kindness. It also looks like this in reverse, meeting someone kind and steady and mentally auditing them for flaws within the first week, as if trying to find the reason it won't work before it has the chance to. Sometimes this shows up as a specific kind of restlessness, a friend describing a new, calm relationship and saying almost apologetically, "I don't know, it just feels too easy," as though ease itself were suspicious. It shows up at work too. The employee who lights up under an inconsistent, occasionally cold manager, working harder after every small crumb of praise, while barely noticing the steady, fair manager down the hall who simply does their job well and treats people decently. It shows up in friendships where you find yourself checking in constantly with a friend who forgets your birthday, while taking for granted the one who remembers every year without being asked. None of these reactions are moral failures. They're data. They're the nervous system reporting, quite accurately, what it was trained to expect. It's worth pausing here to say this pattern isn't confined to any one gender, though it can look different depending on how someone was raised to express need. Some people learn to chase visibly, checking phones, overanalyzing messages, initiating contact again and again. Others learn a quieter version, becoming the one who never asks for reassurance, who prides themselves on needing very little, who is drawn just as strongly to unavailable partners but expresses it by disappearing first, by staying just as guarded as the person they're with, so that neither party ever has to risk being the one who wanted more. Both versions are chasing the same old resolution: They just wear different clothing. Consider a second composite example. Someone we'll call Daniel. Daniel didn't grow up with an inconsistent parent in the way Maya did. His father was steady in terms of presence, always home for dinner, always at school events, but emotionally closed, uncomfortable with feelings, quick to change the subject whenever a conversation moved toward anything vulnerable. Daniel learned a different but related lesson: that love is available, but only if you don't ask it to go too deep. As an adult, Daniel found himself consistently drawn to partners who offered exactly that shape of connection, present, reliable in the practical sense, but emotionally sealed off in ways that mirrored his father almost exactly. When a partner tried to get closer, to ask him how he really felt, Daniel would find himself pulling back, uncomfortable in a way he couldn't quite name, describing the relationship afterward as having gotten too intense, when what had actually happened was that it had simply gotten honest. Daniel's story matters because it shows the same underlying mechanism producing a different visible pattern. Not everyone chases, obviously. Some people avoid just as compulsively as others pursue, and the avoidance is often mistaken, even by the person doing it, for independence or high standards, rather than what it usually is: a different flavor of the same old protective strategy. There's also a social layer worth naming, because most people don't form these patterns in isolation anymore. Modern dating happens inside apps and inboxes that are themselves built on intermittent reinforcement, matches that appear unpredictably, messages that arrive on no fixed schedule, conversations that go warm and then cold without explanation. This environment doesn't create the underlying attachment pattern, but it does amplify it considerably, giving an anxious nervous system a nearly endless supply of small, unpredictable hooks to latch onto. Someone who might have settled into a calm relationship a generation ago now has hundreds of intermittent, low-commitment interactions available at any moment, each one capable of triggering the same old chemistry of uncertainty. So, what actually shifts this? The way out isn't willpower, and it isn't simply choosing better the next time, because the choosing itself is happening below the level where willpower operates. What tends to shift the pattern starts with something almost embarrassingly small: learning to notice the specific bodily sensation of anxious intensity while it's happening, and asking a quiet, almost clinical question: is this attraction, or is this a familiar alarm going off? That single pause, repeated enough times, over enough relationships, begins to separate two things the nervous system had previously fused together: the feeling of high stakes and the feeling of love. This is harder than it sounds, because in the moment, the anxious intensity genuinely feels like the realest thing you've ever experienced. It can feel more true, more significant, than any calm connection ever has. That's exactly why it's convincing. The nervous system isn't lying to you. It's reporting an old truth as though it were a current one. A second shift involves learning to sit with steadiness long enough for it to stop feeling foreign. Many people leave calm relationships before the calm has had a chance to become familiar, because the discomfort of the unfamiliar gets mistaken for the absence of chemistry. Therapists who work with attachment often describe this as tolerating the boredom of health, a phrase that sounds almost insulting until you've lived it. The steadiness isn't actually boring. It's simply unrecognized, because the nervous system has no existing file for what secure closeness is supposed to feel like. A third piece involves grieving, and this part often gets skipped in advice that jumps straight to behavior change. Somewhere underneath the pattern is usually an old, legitimate disappointment: a parent who wasn't consistently present, a childhood in which love had to be earned rather than simply received. That disappointment deserves to be acknowledged on its own terms, not just analyzed as a mechanism to be corrected. People often find that once they've actually grieved what they didn't get, rather than trying to get it retroactively from a partner who is never going to be able to provide it, the pull toward reenacting the old dynamic weakens on its own. Research on earned secure attachment People who move from an insecure to a secure attachment style over time suggest this shift is genuinely possible, usually through a combination of self-reflection, secure relationships, and in many cases, therapy that helps make the old pattern conscious rather than automatic. It rarely happens instantly, and it rarely happens in a straight line. Most people describe it as 2 steps towards security, 1 step back into the old familiar chaos, repeated until the new pattern starts to feel less like effort and more like simply who they are. There's a 4th piece that tends to get underestimated, which is simply widening the sample size of your own experience. Someone who has only ever dated people who are unpredictable has no internal comparison point for what steady affection actually feels like once it becomes familiar rather than novel. This is part of why the early stage of dating someone secure often feels flat. Not because it is flat, but because the nervous system is comparing it to a much smaller, much more dramatic dataset. Staying curious rather than immediately concluding no spark gives the nervous system time to build a second dataset, one it didn't have before, and comparison only becomes fair once both datasets actually exist. A 5th piece involves learning to separate 2 questions that often get treated as one. Is this person good for me? And is this person hard to get? These feel like the same question in the moment, because both produce a kind of urgency, but they are answered by completely different evidence. Whether someone is good for you shows up in small, almost boring details, whether they follow through on plans, whether they ask how your day was and actually listen to the answer, whether you feel more like yourself around them or less. Whether someone is hard to get shows up as a feeling in your chest, a low-grade tension, a sense of being slightly off balance. Learning to notice which question you're actually answering in any given moment of attraction is one of the more reliable tools available for interrupting the pattern before it fully takes hold. A 6th piece, often the hardest, is tolerating the specific discomfort of being fully seen and fully chosen without having had to earn it. For someone whose early template was built around love as something conditional, something that had to be won through vigilance or good behavior, being loved simply and consistently can initially feel almost suspicious, as if there must be a catch that hasn't revealed itself yet. Learning to receive steady affection without immediately searching for the hidden cost is, for many people, one of the more disorienting parts of healing, precisely because it asks the nervous system to accept something it was never given a template for in the first place. It's worth saying plainly that none of this is about blaming caregivers or treating every emotionally unavailable partner as a villain or treating yourself as broken for having been shaped by your history the way every human being is shaped by theirs. The nervous system did exactly what nervous systems are supposed to do. It adapted to the environment it was given, so it could recognize danger and closeness quickly, without having to think everything through from scratch each time. The problem isn't that the system worked. The problem is that the environment it adapted to may not be the environment you're living in now. It's also worth noting what this pattern is not. It is not proof that you are incapable of healthy love, and it is not a life sentence. Attachment researchers have found repeatedly that the nervous system remains capable of updating its expectations well into adulthood, given enough consistent, safe experience to draw from. This is sometimes called earned security, and it doesn't require a perfect childhood to have happened retroactively. It only requires enough new evidence, gathered slowly, that the old rule, love has to be chased to be real, is no longer the only rule available. None of this requires you to swear off chemistry or to force yourself into relationships that feel flat simply because they're calm. The goal was never to distrust every strong feeling you have. The goal is to get curious about where that feeling is actually coming from before handing it the final vote. Sometimes intensity really is just intensity. 2 people who are genuinely well matched, feeling the ordinary electricity of new connection. The work isn't to shut that down. It's to notice, over time, whether the intensity fades into something steady and deepening, or whether it only ever seems to appear at the exact moments the other person pulls back. That difference, tracked honestly across weeks and months rather than judged in a single night, tends to tell you almost everything you need to know. Here's the uncomfortable but freeing truth underneath all of this. You are not chasing emotionally unavailable people because they are the prize. You are chasing them because some early, wordless part of you is still trying to finish a story that was never yours to complete alone. The partner isn't the point. The pattern is. And the moment you can see the pattern clearly, standing outside of it instead of inside it, you gain something no amount of chasing ever could: the ability to choose, instead of the compulsion to repeat.